Coffee Break, the show where we drink more coffee than any human should while asking the hard-hitting questions. I'm your caffeine-addicted host, Mason Langlois, and on today's episode, we'll be sitting down with CNBC anchor Juliana Tatelbaum to learn more about her work in media. But first, let's head over to the Mug of the Week. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mug of the Week, the segment where I do my best not to bore you with my sentimental feelings about mugs. This week's mug, and the very first mug featured on the show, is a Dartmouth-themed mug. This mug I chose because I thought it was to start with the theme of the beginning of the school year, start of the show. I thought it would be a good idea to bring on a little bit of school spirit with this week's show. So yeah, that's the mug for this week. Now let's get on with the interview. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Coffee Break. Today we have a very special guest, Juliana Tatelbaum, who's here from CNBC, who graciously came down to the studio today to come and talk to us. So if you'd like to, just introduce yourself, what do you do, who you are.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Juliana. I graduated from Dartmouth High in 2007, and now I live in London and I work as a news anchor for CNBC, the American News Network, and I host a morning show every morning.
Wonderful. So the first question that I just wanted to delve into was what inspired you to have a career in communications or broadcasting?
I started out wanting to have a career in performance. I was a theater kid. I really wanted to get into acting, but it was so competitive. I didn't really think I had much of an edge. So I put that dream aside and studied economics and became an investment banker, typical path to becoming a journalist. And I did that for about 7 years, and then realized that there was a possibility I could potentially marry my work in banking with my love of theater and performing. And I thought business news was a pretty good outlet for that. So I put those two together and ventured into the world of journalism, and then ultimately landed in this position at CNBC. And as a business journalist, you do essentially marry the art of performance with the knowledge of business and what's going on in the finance world.
Yeah, obviously what we do here is very similar, because obviously I do theater as the club here at school, and I often use the acting skills and techniques that I learned from there to help me here, which is, very helpful when I get to do this show. Speaking of that, I noticed in your bio that you have experience in improv. How does that improv help you on your day-to-day?
It's probably the single most valuable tool I have in my toolkit, is experience as an improv actor. And as you probably know, in improv, you essentially have to say yes to whatever comes your way and deal with unexpected prompts all the time. As a news anchor on a live news show, the biggest challenge is digesting new information and pivoting, being able to react in real time to something unexpected. And the number one rule of improv is yes and. You take whatever is thrown your way, you accept it, and you take it further. So that absolutely aids me every day as a news anchor, probably the most valuable thing.
Yes, absolutely. And what was your favorite story that you ever have covered when your time as an anchor?
My favorite story I've covered was the vaccine story around COVID-19. During the pandemic, everybody was obviously thrust into uncertainty at home, really, unclear. It was unclear where things were headed. I had some background in healthcare. I worked in the chemicals part of investment banking. So I was pretty well placed to follow the vaccine makers, the pharmaceutical companies that were developing these drugs, pretty well placed to do that. So I took hold of that beat, and it meant that I was tracking the vaccine data as it came. And back in November, this was now probably 2 years ago, when the vaccine, when news came of the effectiveness of the vaccines came, I was one of the first people to know. CNBC was right on the front lines of that story, and to be able to bring that information, look at the data, analyze it, and bring that information to the world essentially in real time felt really powerful and really impactful. More so than some of the day-to-day business stories we do, which are interesting, but not necessarily so impactful for the entire world. That was a really special story to cover.
Yeah, that's a very cool thing to be able to share that such big news with like quite literally everyone in the world at the time. It's a crazy amount of outreach that people as journalists have, and it's such a cool power to hold. But speaking on that, what advice would you have for someone that wanted to get into the entertainment industry, for all those people out there that want to know?
I think being a willingness to work hard and do smaller jobs is a really big part of getting whatever career it is that you want, and journalism is no exception. It takes a while to land in an anchor seat, and to be willing to get your hands dirty with whatever is needed in the industry and just breaking in is probably the best thing you can possibly do. Being less focused on your end goal and just being focused on a willingness to do whatever it takes. I started out as a reporter when I broke into this industry. I reported on whatever story I was given, and some of the stories were exciting, some of them were a little bit more mundane, but if you're just willing to put yourself out there and do whatever is asked of you, then more and more opportunities will come your way. And if you're willing to be part of a team, I think it's the best thing that can serve you. And just generally, I think putting out there what you want, and being very vocal about it, talking to people, you never know where you're going to find someone who can aid your career and help your dreams come true. And I ultimately met someone at CNBC unexpectedly at a dinner, and she was my ticket into the network. And if I hadn't gone to the dinner, if I hadn't talked to her a little bit about what I was hoping to do, then I probably wouldn't have ended up where I am now. So willingness to talk and a willingness to do the grunt work, I think those two things will really serve you.
Yeah, the grit and drive and determination is a very big, good, well, not just a big thing, but like a good thing to have within you as a person to be able to really achieve your dreams, and that's a wonderful thing. So continuing on your day-to-day and like your job as a reporter, you focus a lot in economics and stuff like that. As you said, you married the two when you found your passion. So what sparked your interest in economics in general?
Thanks for asking. I was at university at Connecticut College, a liberal arts school, and I was studying pre-med when I started. I had a lot of varying interests, wasn't really sure where I was going to end up. And I was reading The Economist in my downtime away from pre-med, and I wasn't really loving the pre-med classes. And I found myself really compelled by what was in The Economist, but I didn't really have any context for understanding it. I wasn't able to absorb a lot of the stories, and I just found myself super, super curious. I wanted to know a little bit about everything that was in there, and that's what drew me to banking. Ultimately, banking is a global business. It touches everything that's happening in the world, essentially manifests itself in financial markets. And it was a way, I think, for me to explore that curiosity, a way to not only make money at a job, but learn about the world in doing so. So my goal when I transitioned into banking and I left that other path behind was to be able to read The Economist cover to cover and understand what was in it. And I think a lot of people actually share that goal who've gone into a similar industry. I think banking, economics, and the finance world, it's so global in nature. And as I said, everything that's happening in the world really manifests itself in the world of finance, that it's a way to just be on top of every major story. If there's a strike that happens at an auto plant or a storm, if it is big enough, it will turn up somehow in the finance world. So it kind of captures everything, and that was really appealing to me.
Nice, yeah. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for coming on again, and yeah, thanks so much
Thank
for
you so
coming.
much for having me. Of course.
New laws and regulations that involve vulnerable users are constantly being enforced to keep all people safe no matter what form of transportation they use. Vulnerable users can be many different types of people, but people walking are most likely to be the ones that you come across on the road.
Walkers may see possible dangers when crossing the road. Here is an example of what not to do. See how she doesn't look both ways before she crossed, was distracted with her phone, and didn't bother to use the crosswalk. These types of risks could result in accidents, and it's important to do things the proper way to remain safe.
Here's the right way to cross the road. See how she uses a crosswalk and even looks both ways before doing so? There are no distractions and she easily makes it to the other side unharmed. It is very crucial to do these things in order to keep yourself and others out of harm's way. Remember to use the skills we taught you and stay safe.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this week. I would like to thank Mrs. Tattlebaum for speaking with us today. Once again, I've been your host, Mason Langlois, and I hope to see you again soon on Coffee Break.